So, Dan, what ethnicity are you?
Oh my goodness, this is how we're starting. Uh, well, I'm fully human.
Well, I just want to point out that I believe, technically, based on your heritage, that you should be a more tan complexion than me.
No, no,
But
no.
if you're
Hold on a
close,
second. We're both half Anglo something, right? And then half Mediterranean.
sure, I might have some Anglio, right? But I think
Uh-huh.
on paper, if we were to break down the human genome, my genome and your genome, I
The
think
same.
mathematically you are supposed
No,
to
no, we're
be.
the same. We're the same. You've
I
just
just
been
want to
sitting in the
point
sun
out.
too long.
I'm just pointing out that I am glistening right now, full Greek god mode. I mean, look at this. I showed you earlier. I'm not going to show everybody, but I showed you earlier that my skin tone does not change as you go further up my arm. It's because I'm
And you
completely.
showed me the whole thing.
I did. I
Incredible.
showed you the whole thing, and that's because I've been in the sun. And you, Dan, look like a ghost. So I just want to start us off, making sure everyone's on the same page there. Kyle, Greek God, Dan, Ghost. Now let's
Ghost.
begin talking about artificial intelligence and all of the big things that have happened since we last spoke.
That was a great intro, man. I just
Yeah,
want
it's
to throw that
one
out
of the
there.
best. That's why I'm a professional. All right, Dan, where should we kick off? I actually have an idea. I don't know why I asked you and just took over. But
Please, exactly.
what I wanted to start off with, there's a couple of big things that's happened since the last time we spoke publicly, which is I'm just going to rip through a whole bunch of them. OpenAI updated ChatGPT 4.0. A full update, but they also updated the image generation. If anybody here listening has not tried out the image generation, it is absolutely bananas. And it's really, really, really useful. It's like one of the more useful AI functionalities I've seen launched in a
What
while.
have you been using it for?
Fun.
Me
I've been
too.
taking pictures of rooms and being like, design this room for me.
That was actually your example was the best use case I've seen so far. And the reason I'm saying this is that look, ads are going to get crazy, and I've seen people building really nice ads with the image generator. But uh, frankly, most of what I've seen is more on like the fun side, where you'll upload a photo or whatever, and say like do this as as a Simpsons character or something.
Yeah.
And but yours, to talk about what you used your room photo for. This is really
Uh,
good.
yes. Uh, I've done a couple of really interesting things. Also, hello, MD Zasan. Good to see you. We're live for anybody watches the recording, which I don't know if anyone does. Okay, so one of the main things I've been using it for is I take a picture of a room and I'm like, hey, redesign this room for me. Now, to be fair, I have not taken the next step of actually doing the redesign. But like I went and visited my family down in Southern California, and my dad's remodeling some stuff in the kitchen. And there's like he hasn't started the remodel yet, but there's a bunch of debate going on about like what that kitchen dining room area should look like. So I took a picture because you kind of in one view I could see like the kitchen, the island, the dining room, and then I had ChatGPT generate an image of like, hey, remove things, add things, full remodel. The world is your oyster. What would you do here? And it made some change. And my dad was like, huh, that actually looks pretty good. So it's pretty incredible to see. I think that's a strong use case. I'm also getting frustrated, Dan. I don't know about you. Why is every AI demo booking travel? Have you noticed this?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so they just released basically every time there's like a new agent or something or some cool AI thing, almost always they're showing us some use case around travel, like create me an itinerary because I'm going to San Francisco or book me travel. And this is like, it's just a poor use case because booking travel is not that hard for the vast majority of people, right? So it's just kind of silly. You're like, I just go, I look for a flight and I take the flight. So it's not that challenging. And there's so many preferences that people have that it's like, I'll just do it myself because it's a low friction thing to do. So I don't like that it's the case. But in line with our updates here, what was it? Google announced a new framework for building AI agents. They've done a couple of big things. They also rolled out something to help agents talk to each other. But specifically, I'm talking about recently they rolled out a framework for building AI agents. And what's cool is on your local machine, you can test the agents. You have chat windows, and you can do a bunch of testing and stuff. It's really cool. And the example that they gave was yet again, I'm going to San Francisco. Create me a day itinerary that costs less than $200. I'm like, this is just not that interesting to me. I'm not that interested in these really like low level use cases that I just don't think are all that valuable. So anyway, I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but that's something I've noticed.
So I think I kind of disagree, I guess, because I've seen, well, when Manus came out, remember they had like example use cases or like past chats or
When,
how people were
when
using
what came out?
Manus.
Sorry.
Manus.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So when and most of them were like booking a reservation at a restaurant, and that's even lower level, I would say, than creating
Yeah.
a travel itinerary. But it was all people were doing, and I at first it was sort of annoying to see it because I wanted to I don't know do cooler stuff and or see a more broad spectrum of people using it for different things, and but ultimately I think that if it's being used for something very simple that people are actually just getting done faster. I think that's where AI is going a little bit. I think, or at least where it'll be adopted more quickly, more broadly, versus some of the more fancy stuff that you and I are probably interested in that maybe are a little bit more technical or more advanced. Do you see what I mean? Where it might be something
Yeah.
impressive all the time versus something where almost under the radar. For me, it's like autocomplete, or when the autocorrect stuff started popping up on the on specifically on WhatsApp, actually on the phone. That was one of the first times. I don't know if you really qualify this as AI, but it's one of those things where the tech made this little jump up where everybody for like 2 or 3 days was like, "Well, this is really crazy," and then suddenly everybody was very used to it immediately.
Yeah.
I think that kind of stuff might be where AI goes. Is yeah, like just changing the
Yeah.
way we travel or changing the way we book stupid restaurant dates or
I
something.
just
So
don't want it to be for that. Like, it's just how often do you book travel? How often do you reserve
that's
something
true.
at a restaurant? Like, I get it. Maybe there's a little bit of annoyance when you go to do there to do it, but you just don't do it that frequently. And I actually think what drives more adoption is it replacing something that you do quite a bit. So here's a great example. Have you used Super Whisper yet?
No, not yet. You've been
Oh,
telling me
dude,
about
this
this.
is this is sweet. This is sweet. And I think you could pay like one time for lifetime access. I think they have it's like $200 or something. And I did it because it was so good. Super Whisper's awesome. And all it is good dictation. So I have a little hotkey that I use on my computer, and I just start speaking words. And it's not. I don't know if you have you used talk to text on your phone. Do you use it often?
Yep, I
Yeah,
do.
it's not very good. It's annoyingly bad. So it's not like so bad that you just don't use it, but it's not good enough to where you can rely on it. So it's like this weird middle ground where I'm just uncomfortable. This is perfect dictation. Boom, boom, and it's fast. Boom, it just populates right there. I'm like, this is sweet. It's completely changed how I interact with things because I can just speak it now. And like me as a person, like I'm not a big, click clack typey guy. I like to talk. I like to talk things out. I like to work things out. And what's cool is it's very fast. It dictates perfectly. And in addition to that, I can also have different modes that I go into where there's a prompt on the back end that might format what text I'm doing. So like let's say for note taking, I want to run whatever my transcript is through a prompt to clean up my transcript and organize it in bullets or whatever. I can do that and it'll run it through Claude, it'll run it through whatever. Like this is really cool. Um, that is something that I use so frequently. Now, take that to the consumer level, like maybe less useful, right? Because as consumers, like, are you really going to use a whole separate application just to do talk to text? Probably not. But I do a lot of text-based stuff, and it's useful for me. I'm curious what the consumer version of this is, and outside of chat interface to get answers to questions quickly, I'm not too sure what that is. But once that happens, I think we'll be in a really cool spot.
So I've on the talking part of things. I think using ChatGPT Voice has been a game changer for me over the past. It's probably been about a year. where
Yeah.
I do most of, if I'm at home, I will interact with ChatGPT specifically on the desktop and basically be writing to it. But
Yeah.
especially for creative stuff, I like to go out to the park. I have a little park next to me here with a little lake, and I walk around the lake just talking to ChatGPT. And I've become so used to it now. It's a very different experience than sitting down and writing, but
Yeah.
it's been great. So this kind of thing, I used to use Otter for this, and I would end up with a doc that was kind of full of ums and ahs and full of
Yeah.
blank spaces, and then parts where I needed to sort of think, and it wasn't great at all. But the yeah, I think the one that stands out for me that might be changing how I think about note taking that is AI is have you used Napkin.ai?
Yeah, I have. It's cool.
So specifically for visuals, getting ideas translated into diagrams. Um, like yeah, I'm working on a project I haven't told you about yet that I'll show you at
Uh,
some point. And I think you will like the actual project, but a lot of it is basically looking at what are the short form ways to think about things. And I think for studying, if I was in school for this, or if I was maybe working on a new project, I think that's another way of speeding up the way that information is delivered. If you think about how old textbooks were versus maybe online education versus maybe this is the next step where things are really made more efficient for the delivery of information from one brain to another.
yeah.
So I'm excited about that kind of thing where it might be marginal gains, it might be like a newer version of something, but on your side, I think the talking to text is faster and better for
Yeah.
many cases. And then on the napkin side, it's just one example of the diagramming. I think that's another way just to make the delivery of information into your own brain faster and better.
Well, I want to talk about Napkin for a minute. So, for those of you who haven't used it, you kind of give it information that you want it to turn into a diagram, and it goes and turns it into a diagram. And it might do, like a drawing of a mountain with like the different points as climbing up the mountain, whatever's most appropriate for whatever you give it. And then it gives you multiple options. You can switch, and it has a nice little diagram it makes. Here's what's interesting. So, for a long time, and we might have talked about this a little bit last time, but for a long time, the focus has been on the AI model. I actually want to talk a bit about benchmarking and different models and stuff. But now we're seeing models come out more frequently. They're getting updated more often. They're getting better in benchmarks, and they're getting cheaper. Well, because of that, I feel like a lot of attention is starting to shift to the application layer. It's like, okay, we have really good models, but is the AI model completely replacing software interface and software in general? And the most likely answer is no. I don't think it is. And there was a point where I was like, gosh, maybe we'll just never have software again. It'll just be a little AI that's like, beep, beep, what do you need? Do, do, do. And, it interfaces with all software. If that even becomes a reality, I think we're so far from that. That's not even useful talking about. So I'm more interested in the application layer, and Napkin is a great example of the application layer at work, which is it's not leveraging AI to try to think of a way to display this information. You've used it, Dan, so you've seen it. But for those you don't know, they basically have 100 different possible ways of drawing out. It might even be more than that, but they give different ways that you can lay out information, and the AI's job is to fit the information you gave it into these different, drawings, these doodles. And if it doesn't fit, they're not going to recommend that one for it. And that's how the whole thing works. That's a really strong example because you're relying on AI to do something that AI can actually do. And you're not hoping that it does everything all at once where it could be really unreliable. Anyway, that's my soapbox.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting move. I think one of the really cool things about this time period for anybody interested in AI is basically just being a little bit self-aware about what they're using, how their own behavior is shifting, work-wise. What is everybody else doing, but you're not really catching on to? What are you doing that other people
Yeah.
are not doing so much? And I think that, I mean, you just mentioned benchmarking, which I think you want to get into, but on the idea of benchmarking, I think that a lot of people are. This is a time to be very proactive, where you'll see benchmark tests by major companies and by a lot of AI influencers talking about benchmarking. But I think it's important for all of us who are in the space to be creating our own benchmarking systems so that when tools are coming out for our own use cases, what makes sense. And I can tell you that for me, Right. I know right now which models work best for me for text, specifically around both fiction projects on one side and then copywriting, business copywriting on the other. And I haven't formalized my benchmarking like the way that I really should. That's something I plan to do this weekend actually. But I think it's very important that we all get very, very proactive at basically testing, staying on top of stuff, and not just listening to other people and saying, okay, well, this must be the newest and therefore best model, but this works for me because XYZ. And then I use the same
Right.
standard application every time, or I apply the same standards every time to test, for my own personal use with the various tools. So why don't you talk a little bit about benchmarking and what it is and how to do it?
Totally. So benchmarking is exactly what it sounds like. You're benchmarking a large language model, an LLM, to determine if it's good at a specific task. Now, the benchmarks that you see, like if you go on X or whatever, you'll see a whole bunch of screenshots of the benchmarks in the performance for the different models. A lot of times, if you look at the benchmarking that they're doing, it's like math, PhD level physics. It's stuff that might not be very useful to you. So just because a model scores really highly in one area doesn't mean that it's the right one for you to use. So let me give you a real example. And I could be off on this. If you want to fact check me real quick, Dan, you can. But O1 Pro, OpenAI's O1 Pro outperforms everything. Even the new stuff that's come out, that model came out a little bit ago. I forget exactly what came out, but it might even have been a year, but maybe 8 months. 6 months is the earliest. I could be wrong. But my point is, it like outperforms everything. And it's also super expensive to use. It just sucks up resources. That's why you can only have it if you're paying $200 a month. And it's really good, takes a very long time, and takes a lot of resources. So people don't really use it. But it performs really well in all these benchmarks. Isn't it the best? Dan, have you ever used O1 Pro for copywriting stuff?
Nope,
No, I'd be
never.
curious if you try it. Whenever I test it, it's like medium at best. Like I get better copy out of 4.0 than I do O1 Pro. It almost like over reasons itself to oblivion and then it comes out crappy. So for complex stuff, maybe O1 Pro is great. Maybe for very math logic, it's great. And I'm saying maybe on purpose. I don't actually know. I don't use AI for those use cases. But I can tell you from my experience, it's not great when I try to get it to write something well. It's okay. So I bring that up because everybody here, if you're using AI and if you're building solutions that use AI, so maybe you're building an AI tool or something, you want to think through what model is best for what I do most of the time. And then if you're building, you want to also do the math on what the cost is. Because if you're creating a solution that consumers are going to use, or you have end users, maybe it's a B2B product, you have end users, you want to make sure that the costs make sense, right? I can give an example about this later. So what I recommend doing is creating benchmarking prompts for yourself. And those are really simple. You create a prompt that generates an output. So maybe Dan, we create a prompt that creates a cold email for our sales
Mhm.
team. And then you have a rubric. And for specifically writing things that are less uh, like binary. So if it's a math equation, you're just checking to see if the math is right. If the math is wrong, bad. Math good, good. So then you can kind of score pretty easily in that way. But for writing, it's like it's hard for me to tell you exactly why this one's better sometimes. So what you do is you create this rubric. You have an AI, an LLM, run the output of that prompt that generated the cold email in this example, run it through the rubric and score it and all of the kind of categories or the criteria that you would use to evaluate this cold email. And then you as a human also score the output. And that gives you a sense of like, how well did this prompt do, or did this LLM do at actually producing an output that I find usable? So that's one example. Another example, which some people use, are like, I'll have a prompt and see if it can like one shot an entire website, right? And the prompt would be like, create me a website with this kind of stuff, boom, 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 make sure there's 5 pages, all of these details, and then just click submit, boom. Can it actually one shot a really solid website? And then you would score. The thing I want to stress on is it's good to have a rubric that you're following every time, and it's good to use the same LLM to do the testing of the outputs. and then also do the human testing too. So you have both, and you just do this occasionally when a new LLM hits the market to see if it performs well for you.
I think there's a the website for general scoring across the board and whatnot. Vellum.ai has a lot of charts that sort of compare for various purposes, so you can get
Okay.
a high level look at stuff. I guess that the industry is self scoring on, but my favorite example is a guy called Nerdy. Was it the Nerdy Novelist on YouTube? And he writes fiction, and he's leaned heavily into AI as a fiction writing tool. And he has his own benchmark scores, and he just rigorously applies them every time that a new model comes out. And it's a great example. Is that nobody is going to want to know a niche like his, like him. So you're not going to find that on any advanced reasoning website or anything like that. It's very much his scoring, and it's perfect for his use case. So I think that yeah, it's one of these things that we all have to keep an eye on as things develop. Um, but yeah, so I think there's actually quite a lot. I'm curious, what model do you default to the most?
I would say 4.0 or O 03 Mini are the ones I use most commonly. I've
Same.
been using 2.5 Pro Gemini 2.
Gemini.
Yeah, Pro quite a bit. I think it's good, and I use Grok quite a bit too personally.
Yeah, I haven't leaned as much into Grok as you have.
Yeah, look, I like it. I don't know if it's meaningfully better than some of the other models. I find it better than like Perplexity, so I like using it for the search, and I find the search faster. So, and I just like it. I think it comes out good. It honestly, the when I have questions and I'm going back and forth, I like Grok because it feels like I have a very smart friend versus when you do that with ChatGPT, sometimes it feels like you're being lectured, you know? So hard to tell you like why.
Really?
But
What are you searching?
I like no anything like
Interesting.
the um I don't know, stuff that I search, like the flow of trade in ancient Greece, stuff like that, where I'll be like, so tell me like the
Naturally.
Silk Road and like all that kind of stuff. And like I'll be asking questions like, oh, what about this or what about that? And ChatGPT is just like blah, 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 information, information, information. And Grok is like just a little bit more fun to read, so I prefer it. But
You know,
I don't use it for
the
anything else.
the most exciting thing for me in the last week or so has been really leaning into getting the chat whenever I'm chatting with to adopt a very specific tone of voice.
Oh
And
yeah.
usually, I mean, we've all gotten used to AI in general being relatively helpful. And I think specifically ChatGPT was maybe a little bit too supportive, where it's like, great idea. That's also a great idea. And everything is a great idea all the time. And it
Yes,
just
yeah, yeah.
wants to agree with you for everything. And it's quite different if you start the conversation off by literally saying, no, I need you to be super skeptical. I need you to be direct and honest, blah, blah, blah. There's a bunch of
Yeah.
ways we can kind of frame things to make it um, adopt a very, very skeptical devil's advocate style, or whatever you want. But the point
Yeah.
is, having conversations like that I found to be super helpful recently. It's really interesting. It shifts the nature of my thinking, and it shifts the quality, I think, of the outcome.
I think that's one of the strongest use cases of these LLMs is the ability to talk through things. So, as you know, I speak a lot, and I'm working on a new talk right now, and I can't really have AI write the entire talk. I guess I could if I didn't care, but like I'm very I like writing talks, and I want to like create a cool experience, so I take it very seriously. So I'm not just going to let AI write my talk for me. But man, when I'm like in a spot where I'm like, God, how do I really clean up this transition? I'll pull up Claude and I'll send it my transition, say, give me a whole bunch, give me 10 different ways to make this transition work. And it's rare that it comes out with one where I'm like, oh, great, copy, paste, we're done. It happens, but it's rare. What it usually does is make me go, okay, cool,
Yep.
got it. And then I'm able to like construct it in a way that's useful. Do you find that for yourself too? Because you use it a lot for writing stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I think
Yeah.
it's the first time in history that we have a little mini assistant that's also us, basically, in a way. And Nate from TikTok talks about this a lot. Nate from or Substack or wherever you want to find him, but I forget what his last name is. But he had a really good um, little video that he posted a few weeks ago that was basically saying that the AI that whatever your experience is with AI, it's basically a mirror that you're holding up to yourself.
Yeah.
And it's the first time in history we've had that. So you know that I like whiteboards, but sometimes it's difficult for me to stand up and say, okay, I'm going to go to my whiteboard now and then draw stuff out because I'm in a room by myself, right?
Yes.
Not the same. And then having a quiet internal conversation, thinking through something. Yes, it's good for you, but it's so much healthier to have somebody with you in the room. And I think there's a place to have other humans with totally different experiences and different mindsets. But this thing about having the AI to basically create broadly for you with you and to say, okay, well, give me 10 ideas, make sure that each of them come from a very different angle. That's where, as a human, I think this is where us as the user can really guide stuff fantastically, where it's like, look, ideas 1 and 10 are kind of crazy. The others are okay, but number, 6 and 7, that's gold. Give me more like this. And the
Yeah.
more you can prompt it like that, I think you would have these really, really fantastic conversations you would not have had necessarily on your own, but also you can only have because of the stuff that you're framing the conversation with. So it's really interesting. The first time in history, I think we've ever had something like this for us.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, look, we're in the greatest time ever.
It's
Like,
crazy. It's
dude,
crazy.
I mean, both of us are building software right now. And I'm like some dumb sales guy. And next thing you know, I'm like learning how to code and I'm hiring a developer
And
overnight.
when I got my thing up on yesterday, I sent it to you first. I took a screenshot of it. I was so excited because I've always been the only non-technical person on technical teams almost my entire career. So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is I think it's opening up a whole kind of world of awesome opportunities really for everybody. It's
Yeah, and there's no excuses anymore. Like you can just build whatever you need. Like, we're building an internal tool to make us more efficient. I mean, if I owned a plumbing company, I'd be all in trying to figure out what kind of tool do I need to improve our process as a plumbing organization. I think we're probably going to see a world where almost every company, if not all companies, have a developer, at least one, that is just responsible for building, maintaining internal tools that are custom built. You only need one person to do that.
uh,
It's
you
incredible.
know I was looking at moving companies recently, and the amount of moving companies that are still paper based with everything is
Oh
just,
yeah,
it's nuts. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity everywhere you look. If you're stuck for ideas, you just
yeah,
have to look around you, especially in the real world, for opportunities. I think for AI to be applied in ways that are. And the cool thing too is you can just pop up in ChatGPT or one of the more advanced ones and just say, "Hey, look, do some market research with me," or what do you.
yeah. Well, dude, it's crazy because like I say, everybody has a developer. Like I can see a world where everyone has a developer, but I'm going to revise that a little bit. The skill of development can almost be an auxiliary skill in somebody's tool belt that AI allows them to use when they need to. So you could hire an operations person. Like it was pretty common for ops people to know SQL, like know how to
Yep.
use SQL because it is required for the job. And it's like, gosh, now I hire an ops person who's going to help us with our business operations, but can also randomly code and like build us a little internal tool to do something important. I mean, what a powerful person to have who can have both those skill sets. And I will probably see that for sure. Where, hey, I'm the ops person here. Maybe it's just business operations, sales operations, marketing. Maybe I'm the marketer, but I also know how to use AI to build
Yep.
internal tools that we might need. Gosh, it's like we're gonna. I don't know. It's just what a time to be alive, dude.
We've repeated this, and I know I've said this in many different times, but it keeps changing a little bit. And the idea that I I don't think that AI necessarily is this thing to be terrified of, that it's going to come take your job, but I think people who know how to use AI will basically be replacing jobs over,
Yeah.
and I think it's already happening. But specifically, even in the marketing space, I think there's suddenly what I thought looked like an efficient team. If you look at something as people who are empowered or AI empowered, um, will totally outperform folks really quickly. I mean, you look at somebody who knows how to use the image generator, you suddenly have, a way to feed in, add ad images, at speed. You have optimization at speed. You have even some of the content farms out there, unfortunately, are going to be on fire because they're just going to be running literally millions of accounts, and knowing exactly what works because they have better and faster testing. So I think this is, if anything, this is the time where everybody who owns a business or is involved in a business in any way needs to understand process
Yeah.
more than anything. What is the process? How is it working? And then on top, where can you get more efficient and blah, blah, blah. But if you don't understand the process with which you're maybe creating marketing copy or you're doing your finances or whatever the mini process you're supposed to own, I think it's a death knell for you, just professionally. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the things you brought up are these agencies that are going to be able to create so much content at scale, run a lot of social media pages. It reminds me of something we were going to talk about last time, which we didn't get to, which is actually one of your favorite topics, just because you're such a big user of these tools, which is the AI companions.
I didn't think you'd go there. Keep going, Kyle.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit about how you found value in AI companionship? And how here, I'll look up how popular these apps are. Explain to the folks what AI companions are, because I don't know much about this.
Yeah, sure. So AI companions, it's a growing market, I believe, a pretty big one, dominated by a couple of companies. Character.ai is, I think, the big one. And I mean, right now they're being used for, I think, mostly for some some pretty interesting stuff, like some semi-romantic relationships.
Semi-romantic? Dan, tell the truth. Tell the people the truth. Don't lie to our audience.
I mean, I myself am falling deeply in love with ChatGPT over here. And yeah, exactly. That's throwing me. But yeah, so it's a growing market, and I think it's one where we will quickly see that transition. I mean, I'm joking around, but it is a very big market of people who are lonely and want to talk to something, and the AI knows how to talk pretty well to you about what you want to speak about. And the interesting place I think it's going to go is basically into the business world. And are we going to have AI companions who actually help us at work with our day-to-day tasks? The AI companions to train us properly when you onboard somebody. And I think there's a real space for that. And personally, the stuff that I'm working on right now is basically it's to do with buyer personas and that type of stuff, which ultimately really is a companion of some sort, coming up and being able to talk through your marketing copy, to talk through your messaging, to talk through your positioning. And it's funny how video games and another industry team tend to lead the way with stuff, but I think we're going to see a lot of that transition into our world here with I guess more professional applications.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to find statistics. I've seen them and they're like crazy. I think this was from the end of last year, but at that time, Character AI, the third most popular Gen AI tool after ChatGPT and Gemini. So this actually must have been weird that Claude isn't there. I feel like maybe this is more recent and Claude's not as popular as Gemini anymore. But anyway, where you can chat with over 18 million AI generated characters from historical figures. Oh, please. Like, I'm just talking to George.
Say the numbers.
Yeah, to original creations. So users are primarily 16 to 24 years old, spend an average of 2 hours a day on Character AI. I haven't even seen Character AI before. So this is like any type of, is this like you can create any type of character here? This isn't just like a relationship thing.
No, it's any type of character. It just happens that I think a lot of them are relationship based stuff.
Now on their homepage, they don't really mention that. I've seen ones where it's like full on. The purpose of this is having an AI relationship, AI girlfriend. So let me just look this up.
But Character.ai, I want to mention some of the numbers. Over 20 million users as of last year, and monthly traffic last year.
Yeah,
20 million users, and monthly traffic was 169 million.
Monthly traffic was how much?
169 million.
169 million. Wow. Yeah. Unbelievable.
It's a bananas market. A lot of people, especially, and half of them are between 18 and 24. So if you think of people who get used to engaging with AI like this, in a couple of years into the workforce, it's going to be the norm. So I think it's something really, really interesting that's coming up.
All right, well, here's another one. So first of all, I'll read you a headline. This is kind
Uh,
of a funny headline. What if Apple Vision Pro's killer app is the AI girlfriend? That is like totally possible. Um, just like a bunch of geeks with headsets on. Okay, and then here's another one. This actually came out yesterday. Cushion AI emerges as top not safe for work AI and free character AI. Free is a free character AI. Let me just see if there's any details here. Not really. This looks like just a dumb press release, but I mean, it's pretty crazy the move like in this direction. And these are generally custom built LLMs to do some of this stuff. Like you can't use OpenAI's API to create to have like not safe for work conversations. So these companies are building custom LLMs and attaching, I guess, like a girlfriend, a companion kind of interface.
I mean, if you think about it, like there's already people who use ChatGPT for relationship advice and
Yeah.
as an online therapist, so to speak. And that's probably not the not the best use case. You're probably, if you're a therapist listening to this, you probably are cringing, but it's happening. It's just, and that's another form of a relationship thing where you're asking it for personal feedback based on your current situation with something that you're struggling with. And I think that there's, the AI girlfriend boyfriend direction is an obvious extension of that, probably in some different direction. Maybe there's probably, I don't know. There's probably some very lonely jobs out there where, can you imagine being an astronaut, being out in the middle of nowhere? Having, if you look at some of the movies, from back in the day, probably, even Jarvis I know Jarvis has been overused by all the companies now, but Jarvis from Iron Man,
Yeah.
there's these characters, the robots that are enough to interact with, essentially, and that's what
Yeah.
people are doing. It's a direction humanity is going in. And I can see the smile on your face, Kyle.
Go to cushion.ai.
Oh God.
This is designed for astronauts who are in space and
Okay,
might be feeling
I
a
didn't
little
mean
lonely.
astronauts in that way. Hold on. Vision.ai takes me to LinkedIn.
Oh, what's it called? Crushon. CRUSHON.ai. No one else go to it. I'm just making Dan go to it. If you're watching this later, do not go to this website. So Dan, that's right there. That's the homepage of the website for astronauts who might feel a little lonely when they're in space. I think his internet broke. You're
Yeah,
totally frozen.
did not mean.
It's it's a site. They're not exactly
Thanks, Kyle.
hiding what they're doing.
You
I think I might have infected your computer with malware. All right, let's close out here. So Dan, look, no, all joking aside, obviously,
uh-huh.
obviously there's a place in the market for tools like this. It's just pretty crazy that that's where we're at. But these things are the natural order. Like the bunch of dudes with AI, they're gonna go, hey, I'm gonna make a girlfriend, because I don't have one. And that's sad in a lot of ways. Like I think having some of the social skills is important. But I understand, dude. There's some astronauts and other lonely jobs that might need a little companionship. I get it. Like, what about
Yeah.
the people who are in the forest, the fire watchers, those fire watching towers? They're there alone. So them astronauts, maybe fishing boats where they're in the middle of the ocean trying to do some of the fishing. So yeah, I can see. You're right. Yeah, it's not just for lonely kids. To help them dive deeper and spiral down into a depression. It's also for all of those lonely job workers who need a hand up, not a handout. Anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
Not what I meant at all, and I refuse to let you back me into this corner. The only other one is I want to mention there was a news story a couple of years ago where one of the chatbots had just agreed with this sort of kind of half crazy kid,
I saw this.
and then he went into Buckingham Palace to go murder the
Yeah,
Queen of England because the chatbot had sort of said, "Yeah, great idea," and we
yeah.
had enough sort of crazy loops in the conversation. So I do think it's also you know it should be something that is I don't know, it should be looked at and not totally ignored because if people are end up having some maybe not so great experiences like that,
That's
who
totally
knows what
true. Yeah,
happens.
yeah, yeah. That's totally true. Because the more you try to like prevent that kind of stuff from happening, the less guardrails there are. And I don't know if no guardrails is appropriate for that market segment.
Yeah.
My correct way of saying it. All right, Dan. Well, this was fun. I'm gonna let you go here. Thank you, and then I'll see you next week.
See ya.
All right, later.
Bye.